Saudi Arabia sits on approximately 17% of the world's proven oil reserves. It pumps approximately 10 million barrels per day. At current prices, that generates roughly $300 billion in oil revenue per year. The country has known, since at least the 1970s, that this cannot last forever. Every Saudi king since Faisal has spoken about diversification. Every 5-year plan has included targets for reducing oil dependency. None of them worked. Until now. Maybe. In 2016, a 30-year-old prince named Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, presented Vision 2030, a plan to transform the Saudi economy before the oil runs out or the world stops needing it, whichever comes first. The plan is the most ambitious economic transformation program attempted by any country in the 21st century. It is also the most expensive, the most risky, the most contested. Here are the 5 bets at its center. Bet 1, NEOM, build a city from nothing and call it the future. NEOM is a $500 billion mega project in the northwest corner of Saudi Arabia, a region of mountains, coastline, and desert that until recently contained approximately no infrastructure and approximately no population. The centerpiece is the Line, a proposed linear city 170 kilometers long and 200 meters wide. No cars, no roads, no carbon emissions. Everything within a 5-minute walk, powered entirely by renewable energy, housing 9 million people inside a mirrored structure visible from space. The engineering ambition is extraordinary. The timeline has slipped. The budget has expanded. The original population target has been revised downward. Workers building the site have reported conditions that human rights organizations have documented, and the Saudi government has disputed. None of this makes NEOM irrelevant. Because what NEOM represents, regardless of whether the line is ever completed as originally conceived, is a statement about Saudi Arabia's willingness to bet its sovereign wealth on the idea that the kingdom's future does not have to look like its present. A $500 billion statement, in the desert. The world is watching to see if the desert answers back. Bet 2, Aramco, use the oil giant to fund everything else. Saudi Aramco is the most profitable company in the history of capitalism. In 2022, it generated net income of $161 billion, more than Apple, more than Microsoft, more than any American technology company has ever produced in a single year. The Saudi government strategy is elegant in its logic and demanding in its execution. Keep pumping oil as efficiently and profitably as possible for as long as the market will bear, and use the proceeds to fund the diversification away from oil. The 2019 Aramco IPO, which raised $25.6 billion and valued the company at $1.7 trillion, making it briefly the most valuable company in the world, was partly a financing mechanism and partly a signal. A signal that Saudi Arabia was willing to open its most sacred economic institution to outside scrutiny, outside capital, and outside pressure. The Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Public Investment Fund, or PIF, is the vehicle through which oil profits are being converted into post-oil investments. Its assets under management have grown from approximately $150 billion in 2016 to over $700 billion today, with a target of $1 trillion by 2025 and $2 trillion by 2030. The PIF owns stakes in Uber, Lucid Motors, SoftBank's Vision Fund, a significant position in Nintendo, and dozens of other technology and infrastructure investments globally. It also owns 4 of the most famous golf clubs in the world after the Live Golf merger with the PGA Tour. Saudi Arabia is not buying golf clubs because it loves golf. It is buying influence, presence, the ability to be inside conversations that happen in places where oil money alone does not automatically grant admission. Bet 3, tourism, open the kingdom to the world. Saudi Arabia issued its first tourist visas in 2019. This was not a minor administrative change. It was a civilizational reversal for a country that had been, for most of its modern existence, functionally closed to foreigners without specific business or religious purposes. The ambition is to attract 150 million tourists per year by 2030, a figure that would make Saudi Arabia one of the most visited countries on Earth, comparable to France or Spain, from a base of essentially zero leisure tourism as recently as 2018. The assets are real. Alula, an ancient city carved into rose-red sandstone in the northwest, comparable in archaeological significance to Petra or Machu Picchu, is being developed as a luxury heritage destination with French curatorial involvement and infrastructure investment that has transformed a forgotten corner of the desert into an international cultural site. The Red Sea coast, hundreds of kilometers of coral reefs, crystal water, and beaches that have been entirely inaccessible to international tourism, is being developed as a luxury resort destination under the Red Sea Project, with sustainability credentials designed to attract the eco-conscious, high-spending traveler who would previously have gone to the Maldives or the Seychelles. Riyadh and Jeddah are being transformed. New entertainment venues, new restaurants, new cultural institutions. The General Entertainment Authority, which did not exist before 2016, now oversees a calendar of international concerts, sporting events, and festivals that would have been unimaginable in the kingdom a decade ago. The social transformation accompanying this economic transformation is as significant as the investment numbers. Women can now drive. Women can now attend sporting events. Mixed-gender entertainment is now permitted. The religious police, the Mutaween, have been substantially stripped of their enforcement powers. These changes happen faster than any outside observer predicted, and with less social resistance than many feared. Whether they are permanent is a question that only time and succession can answer. Bet 4. Human capital, the generation that has to make it work. Saudi Arabia has a population of approximately 36 million people. Approximately 60% of them are under 30 years old. This demographic reality is simultaneously Saudi Arabia's greatest asset and its most pressing challenge. The asset, a young, increasingly educated population that could, if properly skilled and employed, drive an economic transformation of genuine scale. Saudi universities are expanding rapidly. The King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, KAUST, is a research institution deliberately modeled on MIT, funded with a $20 billion endowment, and designed to produce the scientists and engineers that a diversified knowledge economy requires. The challenge. Historically, Saudi nationals have been employed predominantly in the public sector, in government jobs that provide comfortable salaries, generous benefits, and limited demands. The private sector was staffed largely by foreign workers, approximately 13 million expatriates who do the physical, technical, and service work that Saudi nationals were not available or not willing to do. Vision 2030 includes aggressive Saudization targets, quotas requiring private sector companies to employ minimum percentages of Saudi nationals. These quotas are creating pressure throughout the economy. In some sectors they are working. Saudi nationals are entering private sector roles that were previously dominated by expatriates. In others, companies are struggling to find Saudi nationals with the skills required. The young Saudi standing at this intersection, between the guaranteed comfort of the public sector and the uncertain opportunity of the private sector, is the human face of the transformation. His choice, multiplied by millions, will determine whether Vision 2030 succeeds or remains a document. Bet 5. Renewable energy. The oil state goes green. Seriously, Saudi Arabia has the best solar resources on Earth. The same desert that contains the oil also receives solar radiation at intensities that make utility-scale solar power cheaper to produce than almost anywhere else on the planet. The irony is not lost on anyone in Riyadh. The kingdom has announced a target of generating 50% of its electricity from renewable sources by 2030. It is developing the world's largest green hydrogen facility, NEOM's Helios project, designed to produce hydrogen using solar power for export to energy importing nations. It is building utility-scale solar farms across the empty quarter. The logic is not primarily environmental, though Saudi officials have become adept at speaking the language of climate action in international forums. The logic is domestic. Every barrel of oil burned domestically for electricity generation is a barrel not exported. Saudi Arabia currently burns enormous quantities of oil to power its own economy. Electricity demand in a country where air conditioning runs constantly and water must be desalinated from the sea. Replacing that domestic consumption with solar power frees up more oil for export while domestic demand exists. But beneath the domestic logic is a longer-term calculation. The world is moving away from fossil fuels. Slowly, more slowly than climate scientists would prefer, but inexorably. Saudi Arabia is attempting to position itself not as the defender of the oil age, but as a participant in what comes after it, as an exporter of green hydrogen, a hub for renewable technology manufacturing, a country that happens to have oil and also has the sun and the land and the capital to be something more. Whether that positioning will succeed is genuinely uncertain, but the alternative, waiting for the oil age to end and hoping for the best, is not a strategy. 5 bets: NEOM, Aramco as funding vehicle, tourism, human capital, renewable energy, $500 billion, one generation, one kingdom. And to understand why this moment feels so urgent, you need to meet Khalid. The job offer arrived on a Wednesday. Khalid al-Rashidi is 28. He grew up in Riyadh, the son of a government engineer and a school teacher, the grandson of a man who was alive when the first oil was discovered and who told the story of that discovery with the reverence that people reserve for creation myths. He studied computer science at King Saud University and then spent 2 years on a government scholarship at a university in Toronto. He came home. This surprised his Canadian classmates, who assumed Saudi Arabia was a place people left rather than returned to. "It used to be," he says. "It's changing." The job offer was from a financial technology startup in Riyadh, one of the companies seeded by the PIF's innovation investment programs, building payment infrastructure for the Saudi consumer market that the government is deliberately shifting toward cashless transactions as part of Vision 2030. The offer was competitive. The work was interesting. The company was young and fast and full of people his age who had studied abroad and come back and were building something real in the city they grew up in. He took it. 5 years ago, he says, this company would not have existed. The regulatory environment would not have permitted it. The customer base would not have been ready for it. The culture would not have supported a woman as my direct manager. He pauses. 4 of those things have changed in 5 years. But Khalid carries a complication that does not appear in the Vision 2030 brochures. His uncle works for the government, has worked for the government for 30 years. Good salary, long holidays, a retirement package that will sustain him comfortably for the rest of his life. He has never experienced a performance review. He has never been at risk of losing his job. He does not entirely understand what Khalid does or why it matters. My uncle is not a bad person, Khalid says carefully. He is a product of a system that was designed to employ Saudi men in comfortable government jobs. That system worked. For him, for his generation, for the social stability it was trying to maintain. He looks at his phone. That system cannot scale to my generation. There are too many of us. The government cannot employ all of us. The oil money cannot support all of us indefinitely. He thinks about this. We have to build something. For the first time, actually build something, not just extract something and distribute it. That's a completely different skill set, and we have approximately 1 generation to develop it. Beyond the oil, which everyone knows about, Saudi Arabia possesses assets that are less discussed but potentially as consequential: geography and connectivity. Saudi Arabia sits at the intersection of 3 continents. Riyadh is equidistant from London and Singapore, from Moscow and Nairobi. This is not incidental. It is the reason Saudi Arabia is developing its airports, its logistics infrastructure, and its financial services with an eye toward becoming the connectivity hub of the emerging world. The Dubai model applied at Saudi scale. King Salman International Airport, currently under construction in Riyadh, is designed to be the largest airport in the world by passenger capacity: 185 million passengers per year by 2050. 6 runways, a terminal the size of a small city. If this is built and if it works, Riyadh becomes the transit point between Asia and Africa and Europe in ways that create enormous ancillary economic activity: hospitality, logistics, financial services, business services that compound over decades. Capital. The public investment fund's $700 billion in assets makes Saudi Arabia one of the largest sovereign investors in the world. Unlike smaller sovereign wealth funds that primarily preserve existing wealth, the PIF is being used as an active industrial policy instrument, seeding industries, creating markets, funding infrastructure, and taking positions in companies whose technologies Saudi Arabia wants access to and influence over. This is not philanthropy, it is strategy. The same strategy that China used with state investment and that the United States is now rediscovering with the CHIPS Act and the IRA. The willingness to use public capital to shape private market outcomes in strategically important industries. Religious authority. The custodian of the 2 holy mosques, the title held by the Saudi king, is not merely an honorific. It confers a form of soft power across the approximately 1.9 billion Muslims worldwide that no other state possesses. Mecca and Medina receive approximately 25 million pilgrims annually for Hajj and Umrah. The religious, cultural, and diplomatic weight this creates is genuinely significant in ways that are difficult to quantify but impossible to ignore in any serious assessment of Saudi strategic assets. Scale. Saudi Arabia is not a city-state like Singapore or a small principality like Monaco. It is a country the size of Western Europe, with a population growing toward 40 million. The domestic market that Vision 2030 is trying to develop is large enough to support genuine industry, not just export processing zones or tourism enclaves, but an economy with real domestic demand. If the young Saudi population can be employed productively in a private sector of genuine scale and genuine value creation, the resulting economy looks fundamentally different from the hydrocarbon monoculture that preceded it.